Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I'm here with part 1 of my 10 cards 1 kit using the Simon Says Stamp August 2019 card kit. And the stamp set that was included is called Party Like a Panda. So I knew that I was going to use a bunch of these panda images, and rather than stamp and fussy cut each one out, I thought I would just stamp all of them a bunch of times and then run that through my scan and cut, so I would have all of these ready to go as I put each of my cards together. So since I knew that I wanted to color these with my Copics, I'm going to go ahead and stamp these out using Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'm stamping on some Nina Solar White. So here I've got all my images cut out and I'm just lining everything up to get ready to go. I also decided to create a few of these die cut pandas to get me started as well. So I've gone ahead and trimmed out this die from the velour that was included in the card kit. So we got some white and some black, and it has a really nice velvety, soft, fuzzy texture to it. So I went ahead and trimmed all this out, and if I'd been thinking, I should have actually gone ahead and used the Stick-It to attach some of that to each of the different colors and then place these together on some cardstock, but I wasn't, and I went ahead and just trimmed them without anything behind them. So now I've peeled away the backing on one side of the Stick-It and I'm just putting everything in place. The best way I found after doing that was then to actually peel it up again and go ahead and place that on some cardstock, and then I will fussy cut around that. Okay, so let's jump in here to card number 1. I'm going to create a slider card. I'm going to create sort of a mound of all of these presents and then have my bear slide up peeking out from behind there. So I've gone ahead, and to save some time, I have gone ahead and colored everything off camera, but I will list all of the colors that I used for you on my blog post. Here I'm using some scrap Nina, and I've just gone ahead and trimmed out this pyramid to cover the bear. And then I'm going to go ahead and stack all of these presents together to cover up the pyramid. And then once I have all that together, I'm going to use some pop dots to place this on top of where the bear is going to slide. And I'll take you through all of that as we go. So I'm just lining things up here, and then as I'm happy with the positions, I'll add a little dot of some art glitter glue to keep those down in place. Now I'm going to get my slider channel created. So I've pulled out this die from the MFT Blueprints 32 set, and I've trimmed down this green check pattern paper to 4x5 1/4. I'm going to place this die right in the center. I will run that through my die cutting machine, and that will leave me with the opening in order to create the channel for my bear to slide in. So now I'm trimming out the piece that's actually going to slide to create my movement, and I just need something that's going to be large enough to cover the opening that I've cut in the front here. Now I'm going to create my channel that's going to go around this piece that slides. So I've grabbed some foam tape. I'm just using a little bit of Post-it tape there to hold that in place to make sure that I can get my foam tape nice and close. So I'll go ahead and do this side, and I'm leaving maybe a 1/16 of an inch of an opening between that cardstock and where I'm placing the foam tape. So I'll go ahead and create the opposite side of that, and then I'm going to fill in the rest of the back with some more foam tape. I wanted to go ahead and cover this slider piece with the same checked pattern paper. That way when it is pulled up or slid down, you won't be able to see the cardstock, that teal cardstock peeking through. It's not going to match perfectly, but it will help keep it somewhat consistent. So I've gone ahead and glued that down here, and I'm just going to go ahead and trim it off. Next, I'll peel away the backing from that foam tape, and I'm going to place this panel down on the top of my card base. I had a little bit extra of that pattern paper, so rather than trim that off, I've added a little bit of art glitter glue here, and I'm just going to wrap that around the top of my slider piece. And here you'll see that fits down in that channel and will slide up and down really easily. So now I want to get everything in position. I'm going to add a bunch of these sticky thumb dots, and the tiniest ones are a perfect fit inside this opening that the frame will cut. So I'm adding a bunch of these here. You'll see as we go on, I actually end up taking 2 of them away because I add a sentiment, and I want this bear to be able to pop up as far as possible. So I'm just going to go ahead and place these down. I should have really left it at about 3 or 4 of them, but I will take those, and I'll show you how I cut those out eventually here. So I've added these foam dots down and peeled away the backing, and I'm going to place my bear on top here. And there I'm just checking that he slides nice and easy there. So now I've got to get my presents on top of him. So I'm going to again use some sticky thumb dots. And while I have this in place, I'm just going to lift up around the edges and get those placed down. And then once I have that marking sort of my 4 corners there, I'm just going to fill in with a few more so that I can keep that nice and stable and it won't get bent in if I mail it. Once again, I'll go ahead here and just peel away the backing. And then I will place the presents down on top. So here at this point is where I realize I want to remove one of those foam dots. He's just not coming up quite as high as I wanted. So I'll just take my scissors and I'm going to snip that last dot away and peel away any of the excess stickiness that might be left over. And there I'm much happier with how he's peeking out at the top there. So I'm going to create a sentiment to go across the front as well. I decided to stamp out Happy Birthday, and I'm using some Lawn Fawn juice box ink. I'm going to go ahead here and stamp the panel for the inside of my card. This is a Nina panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4, and I went with a sentiment, this party is going to be Stew Pandas. Again, using that same juice box ink. I'm going to scatter a few of these confetti pieces around, and I am using Lawn Fawn Minty Fresh ink for those. So I'll go ahead here and add some ATG to the back and then place that on the inside of my card base. I've trimmed down that happy birthday sentiment, and I'm just going to add a little bit of Scor-Tape on either end of that. I want to make sure I don't have any covering the area where that channel is going to be. And I'll go ahead and place that across the top here. Now, since this is going to interfere with my channel a little bit, I will go ahead and just cut away one more of those pop dots. That way it will pop up as far as I would like it to. And that will complete card number 1. So here for card number 2, I'm stamping on a Neenah panel, trim to 4x5 1/4. I'm going to use my Memento Tuxedo Black ink again, and I'll go ahead and stamp out this sad panda with his little deflated balloon. Next, I'm going to stamp out my sentiment, and I'm using "Oh my gosh, did I seriously forget your birthday?" I wanted to add in a little bit more black to go with the dark areas of the panda, so I've pulled in some black licorice MFT cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp this with Versamark ink, and then I will heat set that using some Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White embossing powder. Again, I've gone ahead and colored in my panda off camera, and I've taken this rainbow pattern paper, trimmed off about 1.5 to 2 inches of that, and I'm going to place it along the bottom of my panel here. I'm just positioning that so I will have a color on either edge of my panel. And then of course I'll trim off the excess. Now, once I trimmed that, I realized that the colors that I had on either end of the panel weren't quite even, so I'm going to trim this down slightly. It's going to be a little bit closer to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I'll add some ATG to the back of that panel and place that on top of my card base. And then I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of my sentiment. I'm going to center that right on top of that rainbow stripe. For the inside, I'm on a Neenah panel, trimmed to 4x5 1/4, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment, "I'm so sorry, let's celebrate." And I just went ahead and used my VersaFine Onyx Black ink for this. I did color in a few more of those presents, and I'm going to go ahead and place those on the bottom corner here. I'll add some ATG to the back and then place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 2. So here for card number 3, I'm going to create a panel that has some of this pattern paper on either side of it. I think this was probably my favorite pattern paper from the kit. It has this really pretty sort of swirled pattern that looks like that crepe paper that you hang for birthday parties. So I'm trimming off 2 pieces of this here, and I've gone ahead and added some Scor-Tape to the back of a Neenah panel. And that panel, let me grab my ruler here. The white portion of the panel measures 3 inches by 5.5, and then I've got just about 1/2 inch of the pattern paper on either edge of that. I'll go ahead here and trim off the excess. And then I'm going to do a couple layers here. So for this first layer, I'm going to stamp directly on that Neenah panel. I'm again using that Memento Tuxedo black ink. I'm going to color this with my Copics. And then I have two of the pieces that I have cut out. So the balloons I'm going to go ahead and glue directly on top of the panel. And then this top panda I'm going to pop up with some foam tape. So there you'll see, through the magic of editing, everything has now become colored. And I'm going to add some foam tape here. I'll peel away the backing, and then I'm going to pop that panda up off towards the side. And I like doing it this way because I was able to get sort of 3 different layers of dimension with only having to use 1 layer of foam tape. Next, I'm going to stamp out my sentiment, and I'm going with "You're allowed to cause as much pandemonium as you'd like." Again, I'm going to stamp that on some MFT black licorice cardstock using my Versamark ink, and I will go ahead then and heat set that with the Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White. While I had everything out, I decided to go ahead and stamp the inside panel, and I'm using the birthday sentiment, and underneath that adding in "I'm here for the party and all the cake." I've trimmed down that sentiment, and I'm going to go ahead and create a little banner edge on one side of it. And I'll go ahead and pop that up here with some foam tape and place that down. And I'll go ahead and trim away the excess. I've added some ATG to the back of my inside panel, and I will place that down here. And this card base is from my stash. It's made from Paper Tray Ink New Leaf, and that will complete card number 3. Here for card number 4, I'm going to use one of those die cut pandas, and I wanted to have a little speech bubble for his sentiment to be put into, but I don't have a speech bubble die, so I'm just going to create one here. I use the tin that I keep my Copics in to get a nice circle, and I'm just going to pencil in here that little arrow. Once I'm happy with that, I'll go ahead and trim it out. Up top there, you'll see I've grabbed another card base from my stash for this one, and this is made from Paper Tray Ink Amethyst Allure. Going to add some Scor-Tape to the back of that, and I'll place that on top of my panel. And I'll go ahead and stamp out my sentiment "Party Time." I'm again using my VersaFine Onyx black ink for this. I've added some foam tape to the back of my panel, and I'm going to place that here on top of my card base. And then I'll add a little bit of glue to the back of my panda and place him down as well. Finally, I decided he needed a party hat, so I went ahead and did a little bit of coloring on that, added some foam dots, and I'll go ahead and place that on his head. For the inside, I'm on a Nina panel trimmed to 4x5 1/4, and I'm stamping out the sentiment "You're allowed to cause as much pandemonium as you'd like." I'm also using some leftover from the front panel. This is the back side that has this pretty purple check on it. So I've trimmed off about 1/4 inch of that. I'll add some Scor-Tape to the back, and then I'm going to place that along the bottom of this panel. I'll add some ATG to the back and then place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 4. For card number 5, I decided I wanted to place this rainbow pattern on an angle. So once I was happy with that, I'm just going to use my pencil to trace and make sure I get that corner in the exact place that I want it. I'm going to add some Scor-Tape to that bottom corner. And then the way that I like to do this is to add some Scor-Tape on the top corner of the actual card base. So that way I'm not wasting it and I don't have a bunch of extra, sticky Scor-Tape on the leftover pattern paper. So I'll go ahead here and peel away the backings. I'll go ahead here and pop that in place and then trim away the excess. For my sentiment, I'm going to add that along that angle there, and I'm stamping out "I'm here for the party and all the cake." I really liked that sentiment. That was one of my favorites. And since I'm not coloring this, I'm again using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I've gone ahead and colored in some of these balloons as well as the panda, and I'm just going to create a little sort of bunch of balloons that he's going to be holding here. Just gluing these down with my art glitter glue. And then I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of my panda here to give him a little bit more dimension. And I'll go ahead and place him down. For the inside, I'm again on a Neenah panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to stamp out the sentiment "Happy Birthday." And then I'm back on the front here. I wanted to add some of my white gel pen just to give those balloons a little bit of gloss and to accent those highlights. And then here I'm going to finish up my inside panel. I've grabbed the little stars that were included in the stamp set. I'm going to stamp these out in a couple different colors. I'm using all Lawn Fawn inks here, and I've got Juice Box, Freshly Cut Grass, Sunflower, and Minty Fresh. I'll add some ATG to the back of my panel and then place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 5. Here are a few close-ups of the finished cards. In the description box below, you'll find my blog post, which has additional photos and links to the supplies I used. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.